Mr. President, some people around here call me cranky. I've got a couple of buddies that call me cranky. You know what makes me cranky? Stupid. What makes me cranky is when people don't do their homework. What makes me cranky is when we tarnish the extraordinary execution of a mission I fully support in Venezuela by turning around and making insane comments about how it is our right to have territory owned by the Kingdom of Denmark. Folks, amateur hour is over.
We are used to political disagreements in Washington. We are used to debates about policy and taxes and borders, but we are not used to this. We are not used to a senior Republican senator going to the floor of the Senate to call the White House's behavior stupid and amateurish. We are not used to the Republican leader of the NATO observer group having to explain to the president's staff that you cannot simply buy a country. But that is exactly what just happened, and the details are absolutely scathing. Good evening. Good. There are moments in the life of a government where the usual rules of decorum just seem to break down. There are moments when the polite friction between the legislative branch and the executive branch turns into something else entirely. It turns into a lecture. It turns into a warning. It turns into a moment where a senior member of the president's own party has to stand up, go to the floor of the United States Senate, and essentially ask, "What on earth are you people doing?" We are looking at one of those moments right now. It involves one of the most trusted allies the United States has ever known. It involves the strategic security of the North Atlantic, and it involves a television interview that went so poorly and was considered so diplomatically reckless that it triggered a blistering response from the Republican leadership in the Senate. The subject is Greenland. Now, if you have been following the news, you know that the idea of the United States purchasing Greenland, an autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark, has been floating around the White House. It sounds like something from a different century. It sounds like the Louisiana Purchase. It sounds like 19th century imperialism. But it was floated as a modern idea, and then it escalated. It escalated because Stephen Miller, a senior policy advisor to the president, went on television. He went on CNN, and he didn't just float the idea as a theory. He didn't just say it was something they were looking into. According to the Republican senator from North Carolina, Mr. Miller went on national television and claimed that the U.S. government believes Greenland should be part of the United States.
And it has to start with an interview that I saw with one of the president's senior policy advisors, Stephen Miller, on CNN a couple of nights ago. Mr. Miller said that the U.S. government obviously, Greenland should be part of the U.S. That is absurd.
That specific phrasing, the U.S. government, is what triggered the events we are talking about tonight. Because the United States government is not just the president. It is not just his policy advisors. It includes the United States Senate. It includes the people who actually ratify treaties and vote on the expansion of American territory. And one of those people, the senator from North Carolina, decided he had heard enough. This senator is not a backbencher. He is not someone who sits on the sidelines. Since 2018, he has served as the Republican leader for the Senate NATO observer group. This is the man charged with maintaining the relationships between the United States and the military alliance that has kept the West safe for 75 years. He has traveled to the summits. He has met with the leaders. He knows these people, and he came to the floor to deliver a message that was as clear as it was brutal. He called the behavior of the White House staff amateurish. He said the comments made by the president's advisor were absurd. And he made it very clear that when Stephen Miller speaks on television, he might be speaking for the president, but he is absolutely not speaking for the United States government. The senator pointed out a basic constitutional reality that seems to have been forgotten in the West Wing. He noted that he, as a senator, holds an election certificate. He has a vote, and the position of the government is not that we should act like real estate developers with sovereign nations.
Number one, he doesn't speak for the U.S. government. He speaks for the President of the United States, and on that basis, he can. But when he says that the U.S. government thinks that Greenland should be a part of NATO, he should talk to people like me who have an election certificate and a vote in the U.S. Senate. Because I know what he either doesn't know or he should know.
But the senator didn't stop with the civics lesson. He moved on to something much more serious. He moved on to the damage this kind of loose talk does to our actual alliances. He wanted to talk about Denmark. When you hear the White House talk about buying Greenland, it sounds like a business transaction. It sounds sterile. But when the senator from North Carolina talks about Denmark, he talks about blood and sacrifice. He talks about a debt of honor that the United States owes to the Danish people, a debt that you do not repay by trying to buy their territory on cable news. The senator brought facts to the floor. He brought numbers that most Americans probably do not know, but that every single person in the White House should know before they open their mouths. He reminded the chamber that Denmark is responsible for Greenland. Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and Denmark is a member of NATO. The senator then walked us through exactly what that membership has meant for the United States. He took us back to the only time in the 75-year history of NATO that the alliance invoked Article 5. Article 5 is the core of the treaty. It says that an attack on one is an attack on all. It is the ultimate guarantee, and it has been used exactly once after the United States was attacked on September 11th. When that happened, when the United States called for help in the war on terror, Denmark answered. They didn't just send a token force. They didn't just send a few advisors to sit in safe zones. According to the senator, since that first mission began, more than 18,000 Danish soldiers have deployed to Afghanistan. 18,000. They deployed with American forces. They deployed with British forces. They went to the front lines, and they paid the price. The senator cited the specific number of Danish soldiers who lost their lives fighting alongside Americans. The number is 43. 43 Danish soldiers came home in flag-draped coffins because they were helping the United States hold the Taliban and Al-Qaeda responsible for 9/11.
Since their first mission began, more than 18,000 Danish soldiers have deployed to Afghanistan with American and British forces. Throughout their deployments in Afghanistan, 43 of their soldiers lost their life fighting aside American soldiers defending our freedom and holding the Taliban and Al-Qaeda responsible for the events of September the 11th. 43 soldiers losing their lives. There are only about 5 or 6 NATO countries who lost more. And what's remarkable about this is a country of about 6 million people.
Now, 43 might sound like a small number compared to American losses, but the senator from North Carolina put that number into a devastating context. He reminded us that Denmark is a small country. It has a population of about 6 million people. When you adjust for population, when you look at the losses on a per capita basis, the sacrifice of Denmark is staggering. The senator noted that on a per capita basis, Denmark suffered a fatality rate over 6 times higher than Germany. They suffered a fatality rate more than 3 times higher than France. This small nation, with its small military, matched or exceeded the losses of much larger allies who had far greater resources. They punched way above their weight class, and they did it for us. The senator was adamant about where these soldiers were fighting. They weren't in the rear. They weren't doing safe, symbolic missions to make the politicians look good. They were in the most kinetic combat zones. They were in Helmand Province. They were fighting at the height of the insurgency alongside UK units. They accepted frontline combat roles. They accepted the risk, and 43 of them didn't make it home. The senator described this as a serious commitment to the safety and security of the United States.
On a per capita basis, Denmark suffered over 6 times the fatality rate of Germany and more than 3 times the fatality rate of France, matching or exceeding losses much larger allies with far greater resources. So despite its small military, Denmark has deployed forces to some of the most dangerous kinetic combat zones, particularly Helmand Province, fighting alongside UK units. At the height of the insurgency, Danish forces accepted frontline combat roles. Some lost their lives as a result of it. Not low-risk symbolic missions. For a small democracy, sustaining this level of risk over more than a decade reflects a serious commitment to NATO and a serious commitment to the safety and security of the United States.
This is what a true ally looks like. This is what a friend looks like. And this brings us back to the core of the senator's anger. This brings us back to why he was standing on the floor of the Senate calling the White House's behavior amateurish. Because you do not treat a friend like this. You do not look at a nation that has sacrificed its sons and daughters for your security and then turn around and talk about buying their territory as if it is a used car. The senator actually asked for unanimous consent to put the photograph of U.S. Marines thanking the Danes into the official record. He wanted that image there. He wanted the history of that sacrifice to be physically present in the congressional record, perhaps as a reminder to the people down the street at the White House who seem to have forgotten it. The tone of the speech shifted at this point. It went from a defense of an ally to a direct expression of personal frustration. And this is where the senator gave us a glimpse into the mood among serious Republicans on Capitol Hill. He said that some people call him cranky. He admitted it. He has buddies who call him cranky, but then he told us exactly what makes him cranky. Stupid, he said. You know what makes me cranky? Stupid. He said what makes him cranky is when people don't do their homework. He said what makes him cranky is when the United States executes a serious, successful mission like the one they had just been briefed on regarding Venezuela, only to have that good work tarnished by insane comments about buying territory from the Kingdom of Denmark. He called it insane. This is a United States senator talking about the White House's public messaging. Insane. He said, folks, amateur hour is over. That is a line that resonates. Amateur hour is over. It implies that what we have been watching specifically from advisors like Stephen Miller has been a performance by people who simply do not know what they are doing. The senator was ruthless in his dismantling of the advisor's authority. He made it clear Stephen Miller does not speak for the Senate, he does not speak for Congress, and he does not get to decide that the U.S. government wants to annex Greenland. The senator reminded everyone that we are a co-equal branch of government. If such a wild idea were ever to actually happen, there would have to be a vote. There would be a process. It wouldn't just be a surreal environment where a deputy chief of staff thinks it is cute to say things on TV. Cute. That was the word he used. He dismissed the president's senior policy advisor as someone trying to be cute on television while endangering international alliances. And this leads us to the question of advice. How did we get here? How did the president of the United States end up in a feud with Denmark? The senator offered 2 theories, and neither of them makes the White House look good. Theory number 1, the president came up with the idea himself. Now, presidents come up with ideas all the time. Some are good, some are bad. But the senator argued that if the president had this idea, someone in his inner circle should have had the courage and the expertise to stop it. Someone should have said, Mr. President, that's a great idea, but take a look at our alliance. Someone should have said, Mr. President, take a look at the most important alliance in the history of the United States, the NATO alliance. Someone should have warned him that making a move on Greenland could destabilize that alliance. This is the job of an advisor. The job is to look around corners. The job is to see the dangers that the president might miss. And clearly, that did not happen. The senator pointed out something vital here, a strategic fact that makes the whole purchase idea even more unnecessary. He pointed out that we don't need to buy Greenland to have a military presence there. We are already there. The senator noted that at one point, the United States had 17 military installations in Greenland. 17. He said the Danes are not refusing us access. They are not stopping us from projecting power into the Arctic. We have access. We have a partnership. As the senator put it, we could do it without taking over a NATO country. This is the kind of advice the president should have been given. The senator challenged anyone to find a credible general, anyone with a star on their shoulder, who would say that buying Greenland is a good idea. He implied that you couldn't find one because the military understands the value of the alliance. They understand that NATO is what keeps the world safe.
One of two things happened with Greenland. Either one, the president came up with the idea that maybe we should have Greenland as a part of our assets. And somebody said that's a great idea, versus saying, Mr. President, take a look at our alliance. Take a look at the most important alliance in the history of the United States, the NATO alliance. This could actually destabilize that, Mr. President. Mr. President, you should know at one point we had 17 military installations in Greenland, and they'd be happy to have us back. They're not refusing to have us have access to project power into the Arctic. We could do it without taking over a NATO country. That's the sort of advice that they should have been given. So if the president thought it was a good idea, then he needs the expertise to say, Mr. President, that's why this is not a good idea. And I would defy you to find any credible general with a star on his shoulder who would say that it is.
So that was theory number one. The president had a bad idea and his staff failed to correct him. But then there is theory number two. And this one is arguably worse. The flip side, as the senator put it, is that maybe it was Stephen Miller or someone else in the White House who originated the idea. Maybe one of them said, hey, this would be cool. Let's take over Greenland. The senator mocked this line of thinking. He imagined them saying, it'll be like a big aircraft carrier. And his response to that hypothetical scenario was short and sharp. Well, that's stupid too. He didn't mince words. He didn't try to be diplomatic. He called it stupid. And then he delivered the line that sums up the entire frustration of the governing wing of the Republican Party right now. He said, I'm sick of stupid. He said he wants good advice for the president because he wants the president to have a good legacy. He sees this nonsense, this distraction with Greenland, as something that is actively hurting the president's work. And here is the kicker. He didn't just say they were wrong, he called for consequences. The senator said that the amateurs who said this was a good idea should lose their jobs.
The flip side could be that Mr. Miller or somebody else said, hey, this would be cool. Let's take over Greenland. It'll be like a big aircraft carrier. Well, that's stupid too. And I'm sick of stupid. I want good advice for this president because I want this president to have a good legacy. And this nonsense on what's going on with Greenland is a distraction from the good work he's doing, and the amateurs who said it was a good idea should lose their jobs.
He called for firings. He called for a cleaning of the House. He said that the people responsible for this diplomatic embarrassment are not serving the president well, and they should be gone. It is rare to see this level of public infighting, but we have to look at why it happened today. We have to look at the contrast the senator drew at the very beginning of his speech. Before he got to the stupid part, before he got to Greenland, the senator talked about Venezuela. He started his remarks by thanking the president. He talked about a classified briefing regarding a situation in Venezuela. He praised the expertise, the resources, and the work done by the men and women on the ground. He called it an extraordinary operation. He said it was something that couldn't have been done by any other nation than the United States. He talked about the people who were injured in that operation and wished them a safe recovery. He expressed gratitude for bringing a transnational criminal to justice. This creates a powerful contrast. On one hand, you have the professionals, you have the intelligence community and the military executing a complex, dangerous, successful operation in Venezuela. You have serious people doing serious work to keep the country safe. And on the other hand, you have the amateurs on television talking about buying Greenland. The senator is holding these two things up side by side. He is showing us what the American government looks like when it works, when it relies on expertise and planning. And he is showing us what it looks like when it fails, when it relies on cute comments and lack of homework. He is essentially telling the White House, do more of the Venezuela stuff and stop the Greenland stuff. He is telling them that amateur hour is not just embarrassing, it is dangerous. It insults our allies. It tarnishes the good work being done elsewhere. When a senator from the president's own party has to go to the floor to explain that we don't buy the territory of our NATO allies, something has gone wrong in the decision-making process. When he has to list the casualty counts of Danish soldiers to shame the White House into showing respect, something is broken. The senator's message was simple. He wants the president to succeed. He wants the legacy to be strong. But he clearly believes that cannot happen as long as the people surrounding the president are giving him stupid advice. He wants the focus to be on the real threats. He wants the focus to be on the real victories, like the one in Venezuela. He does not want the news cycle dominated by a surreal debate over a real estate deal that is never going to happen. I'm sick of stupid. That is the quote that is going to linger. That is the sentiment that is bubbling up from the Senate. It is a reminder that even in a polarized Washington, there are still lines that you are not supposed to cross. There are still basic realities of diplomacy and respect that matter. And when you cross those lines, when you forget who your friends are, when you forget who bled with you in places like Helmand Province, there are still people who will stand up and call you out. The senator from North Carolina, the Republican leader of the NATO Observer Group, stood up today. He did his homework, he brought the receipts, and he sent a message to the White House that they would be very wise to listen to. Amateur hour needs to be over. The question now is whether anyone in the West Wing is actually listening. The question is whether Stephen Miller and the other advisors will take this warning to heart, or if they will dismiss it as just another cranky senator. But if they look at the record, if they look at the history of Article 5, if they look at the 43 Danish lives lost in defense of this country, they might realize that the senator isn't just being cranky. He is being right. And for the sake of the alliance, for the sake of the country standing in the world, we should hope that the stupid stops here. We will be watching to see if it does. Thank you for watching.